Hello everyone and welcome back once again. This is your science teacher here, and this time I am here with a brand new chapter of Ncert grade 6, that is body movements. Students, in this chapter we will be studying the body movements, and students, if you observe yourself carefully, then you may find the different kind of movements that taking place in your body. Students, have you ever imagined that all of you are always blinking your eyes from time to time? Or have you ever observed the various movements in your body when you breathe? Students, well, there are many such movements that happen in our bodies, and similarly animals are also doing many movements in their bodies as walk, run, fly, jump, creep, crawl, etc. And students, these are some of the ways in which animals generally move from one place to another. Now students, can you answer me that what in our body help us to make movements of different parts of our body? Students, there are different kind of joints in our body that help us carry out different movements and activities. So students, in this chapter, different kind of animals and their specific type of movements were presented, and we are going to learn and discuss all these kinds of different movements in different animals. So let's start. Now students, the first topic of this chapter is human body and its movements. Students, the human skeleton is the internal structure in organisms which helps in bringing about the movements in an organism body. Students, this human skeleton forms a framework that gives the shape of the body and provide supports to organisms. And students, it contains 206 bones. And students, each bone is different from each other, but yet all the bones perform a very important task in an organism body. Students, the human skeleton basically classified into two parts, that are the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. Students, the axial skeleton comprises of the central part of the skull, spine and ribs, whereas the appendicular skeleton consists of the bones of legs and hand. Now students, here are some terms that are very important for all of you to understand, because these terms are the basics of this chapter. So the first one is limbs. Students, limbs means the arms or legs of an animal. Secondly, bones. Students, bone is living tissues that makes up the body's skeleton, and students, these bones are basically our hard white structure that are located just below our skin, and students, their function is to protect our internal organs. And students, not only this, in fact, bones are also capable of bending. That helps us in bending of our bones. Nextly, joints. Students, joints are that part of human skeleton where generally two bones are fitted together. Means to say, the points at which two bones are joined together are called as joints. And students, these joints are the points in our body at which we can rotate and bend our bodies. Now students, the next heading is joints. Students, as I said earlier, that joints are that points in our body where basically two bones fitted together, and the joints are that point in our body from where we can rotate and bend our body. For example, hip joint, elbow joint, knee joint, etc. Now students, let's discuss the different kind of joints present in our body. As the first one is ball and socket joint. Students, the ball and socket joint, as the name suggests, is a kind of joint in which the ball shaped surface of one rounded bone, as you can see here, fits into the cup like depression of another bone. As you can see here, the round ball shaped part of the humerus is fixed into the cup like structure of this scapula. And students, this kind of joint allows the movements of bones in all directions. And students, this ball and socket joint is generally present in the hips and the shoulders of human body. And that's why, due to this ball and socket joints, we can move our shoulder and our hip in all directions. Now students, the next type of joint is pivot joint. Students, pivot joints are joints that permit rotatory movement of bones, means around a single axis, as you can see here, this kind of movement. And students, in this kind of movement, two bones are connected together, and in this joint a cylinder shaped bones rotate inside another ligament that forms a ring around the joint. And this kind of joint is generally present on our neck, where our neck is connected to our head. And students, this kind of joints allows to bend the head forward and backwards, and in fact also helps in turning the head to our left or our right. Now students, the next type of joint is hind joint. Students, hind joints are generally classified into the category of synovial joints. Now students, there is a question that what are synovial joints? Students, a synovial joint is a kind of joint which is found between two bones, and that two bones move against each other like the joints of our limbs. For example, shoulder, hip, elbow and knee joint, as you can see here. This one here is an example of a hind joint in limbs. And students, this hind joint allows the movement of the limbs only back and forth directions. Now students, the next kind of joint is fixed joint. Students, as the name suggests, these joints are immovable joints because the bones are joined together, as you can see here. This one over here. And students, this kind of fixed joint is basically found in our skull. Now students, let's discuss some important points related to a human skeleton. Students, as we discussed earlier, that bones are white, hard structures that provide support, protection, movement and perform different functions in an human body. In the same way, students, there are different kind of bones present in our skull. And students, the bones present in our skull like cranium, mandible, maxilla give protection to our brain. Nextly, the long bones such as humerus, radius, ulna, tibia, fibula gives support to the weight of our body. Now students, do you know what is humerus, radius, ulna, tibia, fibula? Students, these are the scientific names of the bones that are present in our limbs. Students, the bones in our upper arm is known as humerus. Similarly, there are two bones present in our lower arms, that are radius and ulna. In the same way, students, there is a long bone present in our thigh, that is known as femur. Now students, like the lower arm of our body, there are two bones present in our lower limbs just below the knee. And students, these bones are known as tibia and fibula. And students, these bones, means to say the bones of the limbs, helps to support the weight of our body. Now students, the carpals are located in the wrist and the tarsals are located in ankles. And students, they are the example of short bones. Now students, do you know whom do we call carpals and tarsals? Students, the bones that are generally present in the wrist of human body are known as carpals. In the same way, the short bones present in the ankle of human body are known as tarsal. Now students, in the same way, the bones that protect the spine of our body are known as vertebral column. And students, these vertebral columns are divided into different types like cervical bones, thoracic bones, sacrum, coccyx, etc. And students, the cervical bones are the top 7 vertebrae, means to say the top 7 bones of the vertebral column are known as cervical vertebra. In the same way, the next, means to say after the 7 bone, the next 12 bones are known as thoracic bones. Now, after the next 12 bones, the bottom 5 vertebrae are known as the lumbar bones or the lumbar vertebrae. Now lastly, towards at the end or towards at the bottom, there are 5 fused bones that are fused together to form bones, and this bone is known as sacrum. Now students, towards at the end of the vertebral column, there is a tiny bones at the bottom of the spine, and this bone is known as coccyx bone or coccygeal bone. Now students, in the same way, in our chest region, there is a single bone at the middle of our chest. This bone is known as sternum. And students, this sternum and the rib cage that you see here, these all bones are called the rib cage. So students, the sternum and the rib cage all comprises together to form the chest bones. Now students, the next heading is gait of animals, means to say the manner of walking in different kind of animals. So the first organism in which we are going to discuss the manner of walking is earthworm. Students, as you all know that earthworm doesn't have any kind of bones, and earthworm body is made up of muscular rings only. And students, the earthworm secretes a slimy, sticky substance from its body that helps earthworm in its movement. Students, as you can see here in this image, students, earthworms generally travel underground by the means of waves of muscular contraction, means to say earthworm contract its body, which alternately shorten and lengthen the body. And students, the shortened part of the body of earthworm is anchored to the surrounding area by the tiny bristles that are generally present at the bottom of the earthworm body set along its segmented length. And students, these setae or the bristles that are present at the bottom of the earthworm body helps it to create friction in the ground that stick to the ground and helps it to expand or contract its body. And students, that's how the earthworm travel from one place to another. Now students, the next organism is snail. Students, like earthworm, snail also has a slimy body which doesn't have any kind of bones. And students, there is an important fact about a snail that the shell of the snail doesn't help in movement. In fact, the snail has to be carried along with its body. And students, the food of the snail is a thick structure that are generally made up of very strong muscles. And students, do you know that the food of the snail are generally a muscular organ that helps it to travel from one place to another. Now students, the next organism is cockroach. Students, the body of cockroach is generally covered with hard outer skeleton that are generally made up of different kind of units. And students, a cockroach has 3 pair of legs, as you can see here. First one, second one, and the third one. So it has 3 pair of legs for walking and 2 pair of wings attached to the breast for flying. And students, along with 3 pair of legs for walking and 2 pair of wings, cockroach has distinct muscles that are used for movement. In the same way, the muscles attached to the legs of the cockroach helps it to walk, and the muscles of the cockroach that are generally attached to the wings help in flying. But although they are not good flyers like birds or other insects. Now the next one are birds. Students, birds have a different, or we can say special type of skeleton and muscular structures that help them to fly. Students, the forelimbs of birds are modified to become wings, and the bones inside the wings are hollow. And students, the bones of the birds are hollow from inside, and due to this they can easily fly. And students, the hind limbs of the birds are help them for perching and walking, and the shoulder bones and the breastbones of the birds are so strong and supportive that helps them to fly and moves the wings up and down. Now the next one is fish. Students, as you all know that fishes have a streamlined body that helps them to swim with least resistance. Now students, do you know what is the meaning of a streamlined body? Students, streamlined body means narrow from both ends and wider from the middle. And students, due to this streamlined body of fishes, they can easily swim with least resistance in water. And students, the fishes use their tail fin for small jerks through water, whereas the other fins helps it in swimming. And students, the tail fin is not only for small jerks through the water. In fact, the tail fin is also used for changing the direction in water. Now students, the last one is snakes. Students, as we all know that snakes don't have legs for movement, but with the help of their long backbone along with the muscles of their body, snakes manage to move. And students, the snake can curve its body into many loops, which gives a snake a forward push by pressing against the ground. And that's how the snakes manage to move on the ground without having legs. Now students, with this topic here, your chapter number 8 is completed. Now I will be come back soon with another chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe and stay healthy.